have three options as a photographer: Paris, London, or Milan. As I was landing, and a thought popped into my head that said, I am never gonna leave.
I think a lot of women want to pursue something more artistic or something that matches their evolution and personality. Like, I'm going back to the person I was before I had children.
I just arrived and I need work and I'm this and this and this, and they were like, I want to meet you. Even if they didn't have work, they wanted to see. It's high-end video for the top artists of the world here in France.
I feel like, oh my gosh, I have that background. I'm wanting to pursue a creative passion and being back in front of the camera, writing, producing, and I would really love to write a book as well, because that was something even as a child. I'm thrilled to welcome my next Passport Jane podcast guest. Carrie is an accomplished photographer located in Paris, France. Carrie has a Master's of Arts in Communication and Media Studies from the American University in Paris and a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film, Video, and Photographic Arts from San Francisco Art Institute. Carrie has resided in Paris since 2005. Yeah. I think we evolve at certain points in our life. We were talking about the evolution of, everything from being a young mom to career, family, and then you realize that I think a lot of women want to pursue something more artistic or something that matches their evolution and personality. So, for me, that's that way.
I think it's really, really
kind
internal.
of going back as well. Like, I'm going back to the person I was before I had children.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm doing. And stumbling along the way.
Yeah. I know. Well, it's interesting because my background was in something creative and, I went to university for marketing and advertising and I loved advertising. And I really just didn't feel that I could make a career out of it because financially and, I was raising the kids alone and I just felt that I needed to do something, more financially stable at the time. And so I went into something that was maybe financially.
Sales,
Yeah, sales. And then, but now I feel like, oh my gosh, I have that background in sales and, real estate and all that. But now I'm wanting to pursue a creative passion. And so being back in front of the camera, writing, producing, and I would really love to write a book as well, because that was something even as a child, like I was 12, that I wanted to do. And I knew it from then.
And one of your strengths, for what little I know of you, is really about connecting with people and then maintaining those connections and then connecting more people to those connections. And so that's your strength.
It is.
I think.
I know. I think global connections
Even
is
just here in Paris and in the south of France, and Agnes with Fragonard, and then Natalie Marsan, and then now Viv maybe, and
it's amazing.
This woman you met in the store. So, and you're really good, and more importantly, you're sincere and you follow up. So that's really important, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
I don't know in the US anymore, but I think also in US, it's probably universal. So that's your strength.
Yeah. I know. It's these magical meetings but I'm so inspired, and that's what inspired me to do the podcast Passport Jane.
You get it from your mother.
It is,
because when I met when we had that special dinner down by the water in Port La Galère, and your mother was there, and the two of you, and I was like, that's where she gets it.
My mom is, she's just amazing because she is the most kind, intuitive, easy to, sit with, and she's creative too. And I think growing up, people didn't see that side of her because she was being a mother.
Yeah, she was busy.
Being a wife. She was running
that role. It's once again that role of being a mother and wife that it's kind of can put a
it does. It can
put a stick in your spoke.
Yeah, and dampen your creativity. So so I thank you for recognizing that about my mom, because it means a lot, because she deserves like every bit of recognition for, who I am and the person
she's
she
there
created.
now. I mean, she wears her skin so well, and in her presence, you feel she's so comfortable and so at ease with her life, and she knows who she is, and she's lived her life, and she's raised her children, and she's so grateful, it seems like, for everything.
Everything. Yeah, every moment. So, she is very much loved. So, Well, we have an interesting story of how we met.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember that, like, how we met? And I'm sure you do. We talked about it yesterday, but
I remember, at the airport, the
Mhm.
boys start playing with their Legos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I met your husband and I met his mother or your
Yes,
mother?
his mother,
His
his
mother.
mother,
And so
yes.
we start talking and I guess Texas came up very quickly. And then that was that. And
Yeah,
then we get on the plane and they're sitting like in front of us, I think, and the boys start kind of interacting.
yeah.
And then we met, they said they were coming to Paris and we talked about play dates. And then next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call or a text message from Jane
Yeah,
and from you.
yeah.
And we decided to come up to our place and then
Mhm.
go to the Cartier Foundation, right? And
Yeah,
we
so we
walked
went to
up
the
to the
exhibit,
Cartier
yeah.
Foundation, showed the boys. And I think it's obviously the East Texas connection
Yes,
that kind of
which
kept
was
us
something
going, and
we
the
discovered,
boys.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I had flew to Paris, ahead of Chip and Beck,
Mhm.
and I think Beck was about 10. Do you think I think they were I mean, it was several years ago,
Right.
and, Mom and I had flew ahead, and Beck and Chip and my mother-in-law were going to come over, and we were gonna go on a river cruise. And
Right.
and so I guess the boys were playing and, Beck always traveled with a backpack of toys. Like,
Yeah.
everywhere we go, he has his notebooks, he draws and art and his Legos and toys and all of
Right.
that. And so my mother-in-law, and I can picture her right now, she had her little blue jacket on, she always wears this little blue coat. And after she was here a day or 2, she opens a jacket with this little paper and she said, "Oh, Beck met a friend, and the friend's mom gave me her number to do a
Mm,
play
mm.
date." And I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is really random." I was concerned about calling a French woman but
Right.
she said, "When you get back, I'm telling you, the boys really had a great time. You should call her."
Right.
So when we went on the river cruise, came back, and I actually felt sorry for Beg because we were on the cruise with everybody over probably
Right.
60. I think
Right.
I was the youngest person, and then there was this one child. So I thought, "Oh, this would be nice for him to actually play and have a little child, something activity in Paris." So I text you
Mhm.
and you invited me to your house. So, I mom and I went and got flowers, and my mom picked out all the flowers, and she arranged them, and, it was a really fun experience, but she didn't wanna come with me because she was like, "No, you need to go do
Right.
that." So, when I got to your house, of course, I thought you were French, and
And you quickly found out.
and you opened the door, and I was amazed because I had never been inside a Paris apartment
Yeah.
that was that looked like a home, instead of just like an apartment.
Right.
And you have a beautiful garden,
Yeah.
and you have art, and
Yes.
you have the kitchen with the glass, ceiling, and I
Yes.
mean, it was just beautiful. And you invited me for coffee, and I was hesitant because I didn't know you, but we started talking and realized you are American. And then you asked me where I was from. And that was kind of crazy because I told you probably wouldn't know it was, a small town in East Texas between Dallas
Yeah.
and Houston. And you said, "Well, my family is from a small town." And so we got to talking and realized your family lived probably like 15 miles from where I was raised.
Right.
And then we got to talking about your husband's family, and
Yeah.
he's
The other 15
the
miles
other and
away.
like the other like the same road. So my parents live in a really small town, less than 250 people. And this road is like 10 minutes that way is where your husband's grandmother was born,
Right.
and then your family,
The Butlers and the
the
Callaways.
Butlers and the Callaway, and the
And the
birds are
birds
in
are
the
the
birds are in the middle. So you were telling me about, your husband's Julian's family and that his grandmother was an opera singer. So I'm
Mhm.
sitting there and I'm very confused because I wasn't sure if it was for real. Because I was like, "This is crazy. Did she Google me?" Like, I was very, like I was like, "This cannot be happening." I couldn't, meeting the child on the plane,
Yeah.
mother-in-law giving the number,
Right.
our families live near, your husband's family. It was just an
Very,
odd
very
thing.
much 6 degrees of separation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm texting my mom, and I'm like, "Mom, what" and you told me that there was a museum in West Texas that had her opera.
Yeah. The Eudoxia's, dresses, opera
Mhm.
dresses that I had to FedEx to this museum,
Mhm.
and, yeah, she was an opera singer from Rusk. She went to, what is it, Southern Baptist
Mhm.
University, became basically an opera singer. She studied
Uh-huh.
music, moved to Dallas, changed her name, and then she'd married a few times and moved to Chicago. That's when she had my mother-in-law, Judy, and her brother. Kind of went to high society, was in high
Mhm.
society. I think she retired. She became a correspondent for one of the newspapers. I think it's a New York, actually,
Mhm.
newspaper. She traveled the world on a boat
That is
and
amazing.
did just radio
Yes.
and articles
Mhm.
for this newspaper. I
Mhm.
have clippings of them. And yeah, and just went to Shanghai. She was just all over the world, Cairo, and just wrote these articles for, this famous newspaper in New York
Uh,
City. And then she divorced
mhm.
her husband, and then she lived a little bit in Paris,
Uh-huh.
where her daughter and my mother-in-law, and then she died, and she's buried in Rusk. So
Which is, I mean, it's so crazy. I can't wait for people in my hometown
yeah,
and that know me and that to hear this story because from West Texas to Paris,
I
France.
and
So, yes.
and her daughter, my mother-in-law,
Mhm.
she sent her kids to boarding school in Switzerland, like some of the best boarding schools in Switzerland. Then they were at Ivy Leagues in the Northeast,
Mhm.
and then my mother-in-law, Judy, met my father-in-law,
Uh-huh.
and in Chicago, after university,
Mhm.
and then she moved to Paris to, be his fiancée,
Uh-huh.
and then they married and had Julian, and yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
and
Julian
so
is
Judy lived the rest of her life here in
uh-huh.
Paris. Um, and she had also divorced,
Mhm.
a few times and married a few other men, as the good American women can
Yes.
do.
I heard she had an amazing life as well in media and
She had an incredible life. Yeah, she actually worked for UNESCO.
okay.
So she worked for UNESCO. She made some films for
Mhm.
UNESCO and for other agencies. But she did UNESCO, she was more in education.
Mhm.
So they have many branches. So you have culture, education, preservation. It's a huge agency
Okay.
here in Paris that is incredible. So she worked for UNESCO, and yeah,
Yeah.
she was a huge adventurer. Huge. She
Yeah.
was more than her mother.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in your family, so you still have relatives in Dallas, is that right?
A lot of cousins in
Okay.
Dallas and also East Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, there's still some in East
Yeah.
Texas and in Tyler. Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
And yeah, and so we travel. I mean, we Julian and I have been to Texas many times. We've been to the cemetery where his mother
Mhm.
is buried, and I have my grandmother's aunt, or my
Really?
grandmother's
Uh-huh.
sister is buried there, in the same cemetery. It was
Yeah, we'll have to check on
eerie.
that. We'll have to see where our
Uh,
families are buried.
It was kinda weird.
It is, yeah.
And, Julian's been to
Mhm.
Tyler, he saw my grandparents, their home, yeah, and of course, Dallas, and Julian has most of his cousins are either in Houston or
Uh-huh.
Dallas, so we met them, and it's funny, but everybody's now it's more the uncles and aunts have all
Mhm.
died, the younger cousins are just kind of busy and having their families, so
Mhm.
we haven't been in a long time,
Yeah.
like 10 years.
So that leads me to how you ended up here. So I did not know your story of um,
Yeah.
how you had the inspirations. I call it a
So
wanderlust.
I moved around as a child my whole life.
Mhm.
So I was in Israel, I was in Florida, I was in Connecticut. I went to so many different schools. My dad worked, in construction, building power plants and shopping malls, so the jobs were every few
Mhm.
years. And we moved a lot. Then they divorced, and So I was naturally already moving around a lot. I did live in Israel for like 4 years when I was really young, but the rest of the time it was pretty much the US. And so that right there, I developed very good adaptation skills because when you're always the new kid in
Yeah.
class, hi everybody, this is Carrie. She's going to be joining us. There's your desk. Sit down. You're like, hi, in the lunchroom, right?
Yeah.
And you have to go
Make
figure out
friends
who, yeah,
and
quickly. So you're not sitting alone at the lunch table.
Mhm.
So that right there, I think was huge.
Mhm.
And then I was in San Francisco for about 10 years studying at the Art Institute, working in fine art, something I'd been doing. I'd done photography since I was like 14 years old, 15 years
Mhm.
old in high school. So I was continuing with that in San Francisco, living my best life as a single gal in San Francisco in the 90s and early 2000. And my sister had married and moved to Spain. So
Oh.
she'd met a Spanish man
Uh-huh.
in San Francisco. She was working at a law firm. And they had to move kind of quickly to Spain because his father died. He had to take over hotels and stuff like that. So she was in Spain.
Okay.
So I was going to Spain, Barcelona, and Ibiza a lot to visit them.
Um,
And I had already been traveling through Asia with friends and doing
Mhm.
photography gigs. Not much in Europe,
Uh-huh.
just Spain and a little bit of Paris. And so when I graduated from the Art Institute with a bachelor degree, I went directly to Spain to hang out with my sister. I was in Ibiza.
Uh-huh.
She had just had a baby or
Uh-huh.
something. I was bored, so bored.
Oh.
And some friends of mine were like, "Go! You have 3 options as a photographer: Paris, London, or Milan. If you want to make it."
Yeah.
I had an opportunity for an apartment in Paris, so I jumped on. I was like, "Natalie, I've got to go. Come hang out with you maybe another time." I got on a plane and flew to Paris, knowing I was going to rent
Mhm.
this apartment for like 3 months,
Mhm.
sublet it. And I got on the plane, and I will never forget, as I was landing, I was looking out the window, and a thought popped into my head that said, "I am never gonna leave."
Really?
Yeah, like, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Where'd that come from?"
Yeah. And you
It's
had been to Paris before,
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
yeah, always loved Paris.
Yeah.
And so I touched down,
Mhm.
went to the apartment, which was in Saint-Germain, Rue
Mhm.
Jacob and Rue de Bussy. No, Rue de Bac. No, Bussy. No, Rue de Seine and Rue Jacob, on the corner
Mhm.
there, a beautiful little studio. And I hit the ground running. So I was calling, cold calling. This was, back before we had smartphones.
Uh-huh.
It was flip phones at
Yeah.
the time, 2005.
Yes. We're using a phone book. What? How
Internet.
Okay.
I'd go to internet
Okay.
cafes and download. So I was looking for agents,
Uh-huh.
photographers, any contacts, and they were shocked.
That you called.
Yeah. I was like, "Parlez-vous anglais? Do you speak French? I just arrived and I need work and
Mhm.
I'm this and this and this and they were like, "I want to meet you." They all agreed to meet me.
Mhm.
Like they even if they didn't have
Yeah.
work, they wanted to
Yes. No.
see. And they all were like, "We've never had any They said usually
Yeah.
it's the reverse. It's the
Yeah.
Europeans that are going to they were like, "No
Mhm.
Americans are coming over here calling us." And they all were
Uh-huh.
like, "We'd love to work with you, but
Mhm.
we can't pay you because you're illegal,
Oh.
basically, and you don't have it." And eventually I met this man, Gilles Couder, who has a company called Après. It's high-end video for the top artists of the world here in
Uh-huh.
France, okay? And Jules Couder, and I met him the first week, and I started working for him, and he opened me up to
Mhm.
this world of high-end art like I had never
Mhm.
met. We were going to parties, vernissages, I was videoed like this.
Mhm.
His friends were just blew me away.
Mhm.
We're still friends to this day, and, so there was that,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of it I was doing for free
Mhm.
because I had saved up money, credit cards, and I had a little pot I was living off of. And I knew I was gonna go back.
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Okay, I've gotta go
Yeah.
back in 3 months." So, it was the best summer of my life, okay? The first week I met Julian, at this beautiful French bar. I was out
Uh-huh.
with a couple friends. He was at a table next to me. We met down in the bathrooms. He said something in French to me,
Mhm.
and I was like, I don't speak French. And then he said in a beautiful American
Mhm.
male accent, "You are the best looking thing I've seen in a long time." And I was like,
Oh.
"Here's my
Yeah.
number." I was like, "What?" It was the American accent. I was
Yeah.
just, I was missing, I think, the
Yeah.
US and stuff. So he called me a few weeks later
Mhm.
and came and picked me up, and we have been together basically ever since.
Yeah.
I mean, we,
Yeah. So I
dated and explored, and we were
Mhm.
together ever since, and I kept working for Gilles, then I went back to San Francisco, and then Julian said, "Look, come back." I was about 28 at the time,
Uh-huh.
and I think I was ready when I met Julian to,
Kinda
start a
settle
family.
down
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
and so I came back a few months later, and definitely that was called rolling the dice
Yeah.
because, that's when I met, his mother and the Texas
Mhm.
connection, and
I know, so I ask you
and
that.
he had media
When did you
connections.
know that you both had family in Texas and, like
Well, that was w
like,
when
less than 30 miles apart?
well, that was when the
Um,
first summer I
yeah.
was there,
Yeah,
yeah,
it kinda
because
took you
he
off.
he was like, "You have to meet my mom," so I went
Mhm.
immediately to go meet his mom, and that's when she was kind of blown away, and I think
Yeah.
she was looking for someone probably for her son that was like her,
Yeah, which
because
is
mothers
good.
do.
So she liked you
Yeah.
immediately,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's amazing. That's such a
I
good
think
thing to happen.
I
Yeah,
reminded her of herself,
yeah.
so making that leap and coming
Mhm.
to the US, and I mean, coming back from the US to here for love
Uh-huh.
and just wanting to create that European story, that
Yeah.
French fantasy with, but I had, it was major that he was half American.
Yeah.
I mean, she went for the full-on French,
Mhm.
which is can be difficult, but
Yeah.
yeah, good, good family.
Yeah.
He has a very good family, so that
That
helps.
helped, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you have your master's that you got. Was
I
that
got my
after you
master's.
came
Yeah,
here?
I came here and I after I had my first child, it was my mother who was like, "You've gotta go get your master's." Encouraged
Mhm.
me, for work and just to get back on track.
Continue.
Yeah, because I started just raising, my son.
Mhm.
And so I went to go get my master's in global communications at AUP,
Mhm.
American University of Paris. I met a lot of people, and then that got me a job quickly with France 24
Mhm.
doing a cultural show and producing. And then so I stopped doing photography. I stopped
Mhm.
working with Gilles. I stopped working in like fine art,
Uh-huh.
which is what I was doing in San Francisco. I was doing commercial and fine art
Mhm.
photography, both. Um, and I worked at France Cant for just like 8 months. It was
Mhm.
very brief. I loved it. I was very happy. I
Mhm.
was very fulfilled. But then I had my second child, and and I just realized, like, frankly, the pay is so low.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It was too
I
low. I was
know.
paying my babysitters
More
more.
than yeah.
My babysitter would call me and say, "Oh, he's taking his first steps. He's," and I was like, I can't do this
Yeah.
anymore. And also my ego was challenged because I was we were interviewing all these incredible artists, and I was
Mhm.
just like, wait, I'm like I feel like I should be the artist behind, so
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
combination of things.
Yeah.
And, so I definitely threw in the towel and, went back into the home, and then I
Mhm.
had even a 3rd child, and then started helping my husband with,
Mhm.
real estate projects and just raising the boys in Paris, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And, now I've opened up my
Mhm.
photo studio again, tried to work for a couple years just
Uh-huh.
doing, like, headshots and, a little bit of fine art, and now I'm going back
Mhm.
now that I have more time. The boys, one is off
Yeah.
to college. The 2 are now in, like, middle school and high school. So I have more time, and I'm
Mhm.
going back to black and white
Mhm.
photography and printing in a dark room, and I do that a couple days a week.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still helping Julian with his, real estate,
Yeah.
like offices and things like
Mhm.
that, and, I don't know, I'm pretty happy,
Yeah.
my day-to-day life,
hmm
and we'll see where
And you still love to travel.
travel a lot.
So where are some of your favorite places?
We had such a great trip to Egypt. It was a little bit after COVID, so there were
Uh-huh.
a lot of tourists who were
Uh-huh.
not there. Normally, it's just tons and tons of tourists.
Uh-huh.
Egypt was incredible. The Nile.
Uh-huh.
There's a town at the very top of the Nile, so the opposite, end of
Uh-huh.
it, called Aswan that we want to go back and spend some time in.
Uh-huh.
Luxor was incredible. Just the Nile, being on the
Uh-huh.
Nile it's really, and the history is just mind
Uh-huh.
blowing. Like what they were doing, um, 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, while we were living in like mud huts, Europeans,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
really, so it's incredible.
Mhm.
The Egypt and the Egyptians are pretty interesting people and very, very hospitable. Um, Italy is always just number 1.
Yeah.
Italy's just incredible, and it's so diverse. Whichever city, whichever region
Mhm.
you go to, it's just so diverse, and I'm discovering, like, a little part of it
Mhm.
every year.
So we both have trips this year planned to Lake Como. I'm
Yes.
going in June or
Yeah,
July,
and I'm supposed to be
and
going in 1st of September. Once
yes.
the kids get back in school, I go with a girlfriend from
So
California,
so
yeah.
yeah, so we found that we have that in common
That'll be
this year
amazing.
that we've got that on the
Yeah,
calendar. So I'm looking forward to that because I
yeah,
haven't been to that area.
yeah.
And and then you also go to the south of France in the summer,
Every summer.
every summer. And
Yes.
you're the one that told me about the special little
Pour
place.
Laguerre.
Yes.
Yeah.
That we've been going and that we've fallen in love with as well. So tell me
Yeah.
what's so special about that place for you.
Okay, well, first of all, I did not have a choice.
Okay.
My
Uh,
mother-in-law has been going there for decades.
uh-huh.
Julian has been going there since he was a teenager. So she always had friends. She had a
Mhm.
friend, ex-boyfriend, who had a place there. She always knew that's where
Mhm.
she wanted to be, and she did the research. She went to Corsica, she went to Saint-Tropez,
Mhm.
she
Yes.
knows that area, so we probably shouldn't broadcast it
Yeah,
too
we
much. Yeah, like,
we don't wanna tell
we're
you
not
where
gonna
it's at.
tell you where it's
No,
at.
no.
So,
Oh.
I did not have a choice,
Mhm.
but she had an apartment down there, like a townhouse, incredible views, and I understand why
Yeah,
it's
it's
special.
so
The
special.
location, the
Mhm.
access, everything it offers inside the complex. It's
Yeah.
safe. Your kids can run around. There's a club, a discotheque for the
Yes.
kids. There's,
Oh.
so I don't have to say
Yeah.
anymore. You know all this. So I didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
And Julian, she's gone now,
Mhm.
and the apartment is sold, but he still
It's
insists
part of the
we
family
go
tradition.
down. Yeah,
Yes.
and so we go down usually for
Mhm.
2 weeks, sometimes for only a week, and then after that, though, we go to the French family's home, like
Mhm.
summer home or near Lyon. So it's also kind of strategic.
Uh-huh.
So we
On
do
your way
that.
back,
Yeah,
that's kind of
exactly.
the
So there's
yeah.
that.
I love that
Um,
you have the family ritual of going to the beach every summer and then going to the family home,
right.
and so I think that's very French too, like, having this
Very. So, yes.
Mhm.
So everybody takes their vacation, which is
Mhm.
usually around some beautiful body of water,
Mhm.
Mediterranean.
Mhm.
And a lot of the French go to Greece. A lot of
Mhm.
them are actually more in Greece. Very few go to the south of France.
Mhm.
It's too crowded, too expensive. The food isn't as good as Greece. And
Mhm.
there's in Greece is, there's a lot more room, it's more
Mhm.
nature, so a lot of our friends are usually in Greece, but and then yeah, most French people then have their family obligations and homes, so they go
Mhm.
and they all gather before they head back to Paris for September rentrée,
Uh-huh.
and so that's the tradition, and that's what
Yeah,
we
that's
do.
what you do. I know. Well, we love that now we have a tradition of going to the south of France. It
Yeah,
is a magical place, and I can imagine going as a child and then taking your own children there, and
yeah,
I'm hoping to introduce it to my children and grandchildren at some
yes,
point. So that's the plan.
yeah,
It's because I loved it. My mom loves it, and it is a really special place. So
yeah.
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 So what's next for you? I know we talked about earlier today, we were talking about the evolution of, women and from everything from, you know, meeting a mate and child raising and career. And then we're at a point in our lives where our kids are almost out of the
Yeah.
nest in a couple
Yeah.
of years.
Yeah.
And we're starting to
They're
kind of
independent. They're
reinvent
very independent.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I guess let's talk about that a little bit on how you view your life and then where are you headed next or what do you think?
Well, first of all, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will say that. I really don't know.
Mhm.
I'm exploring. I am open. I'm happy because I have a lot of people in the US, friends or my parents who are like,
Uh-huh.
start a business, you know, just get back into photography,
Mhm.
get back into, they're, it's just like, and I'm kind of happy with the pace my life is
Mhm.
at. But I'm open.
Yeah.
I am open. And I honestly, I do not know. I
Yeah.
don't know. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know either. People are always like, "What are you gonna do when you grow up?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I still yes."
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm prepared to do
Mhm.
anything. I believe in instincts. I
Mhm.
believe in, destiny. So
Mhm.
as soon as it hits
That's
my
it.
plate and I know, and I usually just take off and
Mhm.
go in that direction and get going.
Yeah.
But but I will, I'll let you know. And maybe, I
Yeah.
don't know,
I
maybe
can't
there's
wait
a
to
collaboration. Maybe you and I will start
I know.
something. Sky's the
I
limit.
know. It
And I'm
is.
prepared for that.
It is. I
And
feel
I'm ready for
better. I
that.
feel better than I've felt in years, like, going into this next chapter of my life.
Right.
It's so exciting, and you hear women talk about it, and, you're like, "Oh, like, what is that about?" Like, it doesn't you're thinking, "Oh, well," but I understand now, like, feeling good about yourself and feeling good about
Right.
confidence and, like, your skills and your
Yeah. But I
so
don't I don't want it to be forced.
Mhm,
I don't want somebody else to kind of say, "Oh, you should do that," because I
mhm,
started down that road 2 years ago with photography. "Oh,
mhm,
get back in," friends and parents were like, "Oh, you really should. You have
mhm.
talent, da, 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 da." So I started going that road, but and I'm just gonna say this, but what I didn't like was that Julian was, like, financially backing me
Yeah,
with it, and it just didn't feel right. Like, I
mhm.
just didn't wanna be kind of like creating a
Right,
studio and having that money put
right.
up for that,
Mhm.
and it just felt so empty,
Yeah.
and I wasn't creating anything interesting, and
Mhm.
it just felt like this kind of,
Like you
okay,
had to
the
do it
studio's
for
there,
Mhm.
taking up rent,
Obligation.
taking up space, buying equipment,
Uh-huh.
buying, it's just like money, and then there was no inspiration, there was
Mhm.
no passion, there was no real project, there was no
Yeah,
money coming in
yeah.
really, or it wasn't nearly as enough,
Mhm.
there was no studio really being
Yeah.
generating, so it didn't work.
Mhm.
So I know not to do that.
Yeah,
I know not to force something and
yeah.
basically have, money coming from somewhere else
Right.
supporting it. It just didn't feel right.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so I do know as well, sometimes you can't go back and do the same thing you've already done. I opened a business when I was really young, and then I sold it.
Mm.
And then about 10 years later, I thought I'm gonna reopen the same kind of
Yeah,
business
that yeah,
because I was good
right,
at it and it
right.
was a need
And
and
yeah,
yes, and I had a new and so I rented a space, I redid the floors, I
yeah.
furnished it, I got all the
Yeah. You're
inventory.
like, "Build," what
I
does it say? "Build it and they will come,"
Yeah,
or something? It's like,
no,
"No,
I
don't build
literally
it because they won't come."
no, I worked there like 3 weeks and I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Right.
I hate this."
That's
I did.
right.
And so I called the landlord and I was like, "Do you want this business
Yeah.
to take it over? I'm really
I
sorry."
know.
And I know he was thinking, "What are you doing? You've spent
Yeah.
all this time and money and
It goes
like
full circle, bye.
I don't want to run
Here
this
are the keys
business."
back.
And then I did.
Yeah.
And you know what? He was so gracious because
Mm,
he also owned a similar business that he
mm.
actually took over. He let me out of
Good.
the lease, he took it over. But looking back,
Yeah,
I know that people around me were like, "What are you doing?" But I could not do it. I could not.
yeah.
It was I had already closed
Right.
that chapter.
Exactly.
Yes. So
So,
when those
I
chapters
found I
close
had that
yes.
I had that lesson taught to me
Yeah.
just a few months
I
ago.
know.
So I
So
packed up my studio
I
and
know.
yeah.
And I'm always looking like, should I go back to school or, and I'm like, but I don't need
I don't want
this
to go to
anymore.
school. You don't
I don't
need
need that
school.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I do think that I'm meeting so many women that are on a journey because that's what this
Yeah.
podcast is about is women on a journey, extraordinary women and inspiring women on a journey. And it's definitely something that I think you have to go through that what's that next thing, but just trying things as well.
Well, I like what you said yesterday. It helped me because the other options I was thinking about was a business. I
Mhm.
have people kind of saying, "Let's start a business. Let's start something
Yeah.
together." Very competent
Mhm.
women um here in Paris and in the US. I guess they're thinking kind of import export,
Mhm.
something. Wine, champagne, just
Yeah.
things like this. They're kind of like what's
Mhm.
bridge the France and in the US. And I'm like, well, with Trump in office and all the tariffs, I don't think we're gonna do so well.
Like, I
Sounds
really
exciting
yeah.
and women in
Right.
business and like I want to run a business, but
Mhm.
I kind of I don't want to
Yeah.
either. I don't want to deal with the nuts and bolts
Of
and
daily operations.
yeah, and
Yeah.
all the paperwork.
Yeah. I know. Paperwork and taxes
And
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 yes,
and it
and
is a
yeah.
privilege to own your own
Mhm.
business, and it is, I think, something you can pat yourself on the
Mhm.
back
Yeah.
with,
I'm so proud of the business I've built, but
and
I'm also
obviously,
ready to
if
do
you're
something
bringing in
creative for me.
yeah, and money
Yeah.
is motivational for
Mhm.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
but that was kind of also back then,
Yeah.
and now I'm at a certain level of
Mhm.
comfort, so I don't feel the drive to I'm not as
Yeah.
driven anymore by
Mhm.
money. And so yeah, I
Yeah.
just don't know what's next.
Yeah. Well, that's the exciting part about life.
Jane.
That is the exciting part about life
Jane.
is knowing what's,
Yeah.
exploring and discovering
Yeah.
and those next chapters. So I can't wait to see what the next chapter is. And, maybe our next chapter is just, laying on the beach in Saint Tropez.
I don't think
I
so.
don't
I
know.
don't think
I
so.
don't know. It's probably
But
something
there's nothing
really
wrong with
big.
that.
Yeah, it's probably something really big. But I'm just excited to be here. I'm so grateful for life and the fact that, a lot of people have their life cut short and they don't have the opportunity for these next chapters. And for me, making every day count and exploring and growing and getting to see the world is so important to me. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I'm just really grateful to be
So
here.
maybe that's
Yeah.
it. Maybe that's it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the next chapter.
Maybe it is exploring the world with Passport Jane.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Carrie, for being here.
Thank you for
And
having me
thank you for all you've done to, and the introductions to people, because we've made some fantastic friends in Paris. And
and continue to.
yes, and you cooked dinner for me this week and it was amazing. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.